Okay, so the EPA's role, we talked about how the EPA is sometimes exempt from NEPA, but if they're doing any building or research and development, they have to comply with NEPA. But even in other agency actions, the EPA has a role. Um, so one of the things, an agency, they have their lead agency, but who has the expertise on environmental impacts? It would be the EPA. So the EPA might be one of these cooperating agencies that consults with the agency proposing an action in the environmental impact statement process. They also remember when we talked about the comment section, right? When you get public and actually other intra-agency comment, um, when the draft EIS is in the comment stage, the EPA actually has an obligation to make their comments on the EIS, to see whether they think it's good or bad or other things that they should have considered. So the EPA has a role in NEPA, even if the EPA is not proposing a major action. Okay, so who works on EISs? A lot of people, right? So you have all your agency people, you have engineers, you have biologists, you have chemists, you have planners, you even have attorneys, and even have paralegals. That was like in the textbook, they talked about paralegals working on EISs. So paralegals would probably help with compilation of the documents, make sure you are working to comply with all of the sections of NEPA, and have kind of maybe help with the public comment and things like that. So that would be if you're working for a federal agency in the legal department, you might be helping to work on environmental assessments and environmental impact statements. State agencies, just as an aside, are not subject to NEPA. Okay, so NEPA does not apply to state agencies, only federal agencies. States on their own can have their own kind of version of NEPA. So in Illinois, we have something called the Environmental Protection Act. And for Illinois state agency actions, they have to follow similar processes uh, to the NEPA process, with environmental assessments and environmental impact statements. So they're not subject to NEPA, but there might be their own state requirements that they have to follow. Okay, so this is, we've been talking about this for a few classes, but, NEPA is a big part of this executive order and regulation back and forth, political ping pong or political football that goes back and forth. So, in August of 2017, so this is under Trump, Executive Order 130807, establishing discipline and accountability on the environmental review and permitting process for infrastructure projects. Okay, so this is kind of what you were dealing with those were the regs that were put out under this executive order, those proposed regs that you were commenting on. Okay, so the purpose of this is to streamline that environmental review process. And the process takes 3 to 5 years for those environmental if we get to the point of the environmental impact statement. And the goal in this executive order was to cap that at 2 years. Okay, and this August 2017 order revokes President Obama's executive order that increased flood risk management to include science on climate change. So it's like, nope, we don't have to deal with climate change in our environmental assessment. Okay, so all right, let's go on again. This executive order 13807 was one of the Trump executive orders that in that January 21 executive order by President Biden was revoked. So, it's like, holy cow. Whoever's president next is probably going to revoke or change whatever Biden has done. So it's very, very hard to have a continuing environmental policy in our country because of how politically polarized we are on these issues. Um, another under, I think this is under Biden, there was a case, Protect Our Park versus Buttigieg, um, alleging that there were NEPA violations in building. This is just like a little hometown thing, that the Obama Library, down on the lakefront in Hyde Park. But the I guess they did comply with the NEPA violations. Another interesting case, which I did not pull up, but just if you want to look at it, there was allegations of noncompliance with NEPA when President Trump started to build the border wall with Mexico. And the court held that NEPA didn't apply there. Not that it wasn't a non-major action, but I think it was something like, for national security, you didn't have to deal with NEPA. So that is our political football, and that is going to be your discussion assignment, dealing, kind of some questions on this back and forth, and how can we, create a seamless environmental policy amid these easy ways to just go back and forth. Paralegal concerns, regarding NEPA, right? We talked about paralegals can work on EIS statements. So if you work for any agencies and you are in the legal department of any federal or state agency, you a lot of what you might be doing is making sure that you are keeping track, or making sure that the agency is complying with rules under the APA or under NEPA. Might be doing things like checklists, organizational charts, calendars, making sure it's all straight. And then here FEMA's emergency managers, environmental historic assessments. This is for FEMA, and it's like a checklist for environmental assessments. Some little tools. Okay, anatomy of an environmental assessment. What happens if you don't file them? I thought there was a checklist somewhere. Let's see, conduct a review. Okay, so for practitioners, resources, so some places to look if you are working for a federal agency. Okay, so again, NEPA, if you're in a private practice and you're not working for the government, NEPA really doesn't apply to you. But if you're working for a state agency or a federal agency, these are things that you need to work for. I have in an old textbook, I have a little professional profile of a paralegal who works as a legal coordinator for the Battery Park City Authority in New York. And so she is dealing with, parklands and items, compliance, things like that. What does she do? She uses technology and automation. She supports 6 attorneys and works with commercial, residential, retail, and park space in this 92-acre site in the west side of Manhattan. So that is, an example of a paralegal job dealing with, either state or federal NEPA stuff. So then let me get back to the module for you. Let me save this. So you still have to do the discussion board and the quiz, and I'll do a little, as I promised, I'll do a little study guide for the quiz. And that's it for the week. And I will, we have one more week till spring break. So that's kind of fun. All right, well, I will chat with you next week. and reach out if you have any questions. Thanks.